Ladies and gentlemen, this is Walter Crankcase.
And Fancy Flickerson.
Reporting to you directly from the campaign trains just arriving at the same time in this station. We are about to interview both candidates and their families over our microphones. Here's Mr. Johnson. Sir, where was your campaign organized? How do you think your campaign is going so far?
You never can tell.
Now we switch to Fancy Flickerson and the Goldwater campaign train.
Thank you, Mr. Crankhouse, Crackpot,
That's Crankcase.
Oh, yes. Mr. and Mrs. Goldwater, how has your campaign trip been so far?
We've got to stop and think it over.
Mr. G, who has given you the most support so far during your campaign?
The little old lady from Pasadena.
Mrs. G, what are you doing to help your husband in this campaign?
Wishing and hoping and thinking and praying.
Now, back to Walter Housecrank, Crankhouse,
That's Crankcase. Mr. Johnson, who have you found it most easy to get along with in this campaign?
Little children.
Mr. Johnson, do you feel that bringing more English singing groups to this country will better foreign relations? In other words, how do you feel about this?
Feeling
Now, back to Fancy Flickerson.
Senator G, if you are elected, will you and your party see that America gets a tax cut?
we've got to stop and think it over.
If elected, is there anything you would add to redecorate the White House?
700 little records, all rock, rhythm, and jazz.
Now back to Walter at the Johnson campaign train.
Thank you, Fancy Flickerson. Mr. Johnson, is there any place on your campaign that you are not going to visit?
They say don't go on Wolverton Mountain.
Mr. Johnson, I see your train is ready to pull out. One more question, sir. Where is your campaign train headed now?
No particular place to go.
Now, back to Fancy Flickerson on the Goldwater Train Diner.
The Goldwaters are about to order dinner. Mr. Goldwater, what's your favorite dish? Senator, are you and your party spending a lot of money on your campaign?
We've got to stop and think it over.
If you have any campaign money left over, what are you going to do with it?
Gonna save all my money.
Senator and Mrs. G, as my closing question, if you and your party win this election, what is the first thing you plan to do?
We'll sing in the sunshine. We'll laugh every day.
This has been Fancy Flickerson.
And Walter Crankcase saying good night as the campaign trains are pulling out. In the background, we can hear the crowd of young people at the station voicing their opinion as to who their choice is.